Hi, welcome back to the new Chattanooga Podcast. My name is Marie Mott, Chattanooga native and the people's candidate for mayor. Today, I'm so excited to talk about a change in how we decide how tax dollars are spent. For too long, the process has been top down and not bottom up. Nobody knows better than the community exactly what the community needs. So then why do we continue to put a bureaucratic process out there that has a small number of people who engage every single year? I tell you why. They don't want the people to have power. Because if we can decide how our tax dollars are spent, then that means people in every district would have a tremendous amount of power in our city. I'm so glad that you decided to tune in again for another episode of the podcast. Today, I want to talk about participatory budgeting, a revolutionary process I was introduced to by my comrades at Concerned Citizens for Justice in 2017. But before I can get into all of that, I want to educate the listener on the type of process that we currently have in place and how it's very restrictive. So the current way that we go about doing budgeting around every summer in the year is called budgeting for outcomes. That is a very bureaucratic and top-down process that is tightly controlled by the mayor and kind of buttoned up at the end by the city council. And it's quite a shame because it doesn't allow the council members a lot of leeway any more than it actually invites community members into the process. And so typically how it goes, the mayor kind of decides the budget a little bit closed off from the council members. And they get to look at it a little later and maybe can make a few changes here and there. We don't really see a lot of pushback when it comes to the mayor's budget from our city council. And so more times than not, they're just going to take it as is without too many changes or too many questions raised and bring that to the community. And that happens in a few meetings that's scattered across the summer, across several districts, where you might have one or two meetings per district. And I want you to think about it. On average, there's between 8,000 to 10,000 registered voters just about per district. So one or two meetings certainly wouldn't cut it for the amount of people that we would need to engage to get really good feedback. And so it's no wonder why, if you look at the statistics for the amount of people who usually engage in this process, it's been about 250 people out of 180 plus thousand residents that will give any commentary or feedback in the budgeting for outcomes process. Now, in 2017, the first time I ever heard participatory budgeting was at a city council meeting with Concerned Citizens for Justice. They were doing a presentation in which they were highly organized and had slides and video footage and handouts. And they were presenting in front of the city council to really compel them to change the process so that it would open up to people all across this city. And of course, they didn't. But it was a wonderful opportunity for me as a regular civilian who was just at the beginning of getting civically engaged as an adult to have my mind completely opened up by other leaders in the community who had educated themselves on different ways of how we can expand democracy at the local level. And so I had the opportunity to watch them present in front of the city council about what participatory budgeting was and how successful it has been for a very long time in cities all across the world. And it was very interesting to see that no one was excited about people having the opportunity to not only decide where a portion of our tax dollars go, but that the council was not really excited about power being given to the people. The consistent message that we get from administrations present and past is that we don't need to speak up. Or if we do speak up, we just need to talk to our representatives and they'll just handle everything on our behalf. That's such a mistake for so many reasons. Number one, we should be engaging with our elected officials. Ultimately, they do represent us, but they don't speak for us. And how can they speak for us if they're not informed of what we want? The second thing is we cripple ourselves from learning how to govern ourselves. And so this process is also a process of education and self-determination and responsibility, that we can choose the futures that best suit us in every district across the city. And it's time for the people in the city of Chattanooga to unite behind a leader that wants to actually level the playing field forever. So we had an opportunity to test this out at a local level during the pandemic, where we couldn't actually meet in person. And we organized individuals to get involved in the budgeting for outcomes process through democratic means. And we increased turnout through the process by 1,000% in 2021 and over 1,000% in 2020. So even with the process as it stands, having young people who are on the ground to show people how to engage, to put that information out there for the public, opens up an opportunity for people to get involved, especially when they learn how the decisions that are made during the budgeting process leads to often the negative outcomes we complain about later on in the year. And so seeing how we were able to get more people engaged across the city during the pandemic really reignited me as I'm running again for the mayor's office, because it's a wonderful opportunity for us to bring this process to the forefront and to crystallize it in Chattanooga. So what is participatory budgeting? It's a democratic process in which community members decide how to spend part of a public budget. It gives the people real power over real money. Participatory budgeting started in Porto Alegre, Brazil in 1989 as an anti-poverty measure that helped reduce child mortality by nearly 20%. Since then, participatory budgeting has spread to over 7,000 cities across the world and has been used to decide budgets from states, counties, cities, housing authorities, schools, and other institutions. The New York Times calls participatory budgeting revolutionary civics in action, as it deepens democracy, builds stronger communities, and creates a more equitable distribution of public resources. So, where are some cities where participatory budgeting is happening? Well, we could look at Philadelphia, where the City Planning Commission uses participatory budgeting. We have Greensboro, North Carolina, the city of Richmond, city and county, Durham, city and county, Denver, Colorado, San Francisco Municipal Transportation Authority. So can we even see that this process is being utilized across the country for different means? For some cities and counties, it's being utilized as a way to leverage power for the community for the budget. In other places, it's being utilized specifically around transportation. So the possibilities really are endless. and how we can utilize participatory budgeting in our city to customize it to fit Chattanooga. But this process is not just about dollars and cents. Doing participatory budgeting sparks a variety of powerful, lasting impacts across a community. One of the things we have to create is a stronger civil society. But how does the budgeting for outcomes process do that with only 250 people participating? People have to learn how to participate in democracy, and the only way that they can do that is by participating. We have to have better, more transparent, and accountable relationships with government. We must create lifelong civic engagement pathways. And we're long overdue for engaging people in historically marginalized communities. But that's not all the process does when it comes to civic engagement. We also have the ability to create new community leaders. So now this process will open up opportunities for leadership. So some of the skills that you build participating in participatory budgeting is public speaking, negotiation, and facilitation. This process also has opportunities for young people to gain confidence, communication skills, and experience leadership in their own neighborhoods. But most of all, it's about the equitable outcomes with effective public spending. We have to increase responsiveness when it comes to the expression of public needs. We have to incorporate the residents' innovative spending ideas into the process. Let's face it, nobody knows the neighborhood better than you do. I mean, how many of us out there were passing by boarded up houses where we live, or overgrown lots, or there's potholes that are not being addressed, or other small issues where if the people had a process that allowed them to bring those issues to the forefront and submit those ideas, and everybody in the community gets to vote, whether you're an elder or a felon or you're a youth. The community gets to decide exactly how much money gets spent in every district and where. And imagine how much change we would be able to make so quickly across every district in the community if we opened up the process that included everyone, whether you're homeless or you're 5. Our children have good ideas. So do the elders. So does the returning citizen. And so do our homeless brothers and sisters. But what is the process that brings all of those voices into one room where we centralize them for power? We don't have one. And so we need a process that encourages communication of needs to the public officials, even through ideas that might not get funded. Think about it. We're getting ready to have federal ARPA funds come to a close at the beginning of next year. What about housing, transportation? What about jobs? How are we going to increase transparency about who's at the table and who gets to decide? We have to have a process that increases public participation at all levels. And we have to have citizens that go through training to be able to understand the inner workings of government. If the people are not trusted with power, and if they're not educated about how the system is supposed to work for them, they will never advocate for change where they live. They'll be hopeless. And I'm telling you, there's no shortage of that in Chattanooga. A hopelessness, a belief that nothing is going to get better. And why would it if the people don't have any power? So the question I want to ask to you, the listener, is, what good ideas have you been sitting on? And could you get behind a process that brings you to the table and encourages you to bring your ideas forward? Would you want to hear from other neighbors just like you to see what ideas they have? Are you cool with a mayor maybe deciding $1 million per district every single year, and the people being encouraged at community centers and barbershops and salons and virtually and town halls for the senior citizens to call into? A process that's truly accessible and extensive for everyone in every neighborhood. The people can decide. We sure are the ones paying the taxes, right? So why not take this idea from Concerned Citizens for Justice that they brought to our city and left at the feet of the elected officials? I think it's time to get behind a candidate that wants to pick up the good ideas of the people and test them out. We don't have anything to lose at this point. How does the process of participatory budgeting actually work? The municipality decides how much of the budget to allocate towards project. So, for example, they decided in a Czechoslovakian municipality to devote 3.7 million euros to the participatory budgeting process, which was about 0.6% of their total expenditures. In 2023, Paris decided to devote about 75 million euro to participatory budgeting. After we decide how much money we want to devote to the process, the municipality may be divided in geographical districts, which we already have those for the city council, so that residents in each district can focus on projects more relevant to them. Because what one district needs may not necessarily be what another needs, right? So the budget is available for each district and is determined at this stage. The next step is the representatives of these districts, whether elected or volunteered, work with officials and a participatory budgeting committee. The committee meets regularly to deliberate under a specific timeline and come up with preliminary project proposals. Those proposals are initiated by the citizens, and they deal with different branches of government and different portions of the public budget, such as recreation, infrastructure, transportation, technology, etc. Participants publicly deliberate with the committee to finalize the projects to be voted on. The initial proposals are developed into feasible proposals. So I want to emphasize this process also engages the community to work with department heads and people within other departments of government below the mayor and below the city council, so that we can take these proposals and make them real working proposals. Do you understand how that's going to build relationships with marginalized and highly excluded portions of our city with the people who work for city government? So they now have to engage in the process to help finalize the projects before they're voted on. In several rounds of deliberation, the list of proposals is shortlisted and finalized. The short list of proposals is put to a public vote. And when we say a public vote, we're not talking about registered voters. We're talking about any and everyone who is a resident of the city of Chattanooga. So it doesn't matter if you're a fifth grader. It doesn't matter if you lost your actual right to vote. You would have the ability to cast a public vote about where your tax dollars are going. Now, what process restores the disenfranchised voter where we live? We don't have one. So imagine the pride for the homeless community member, for the marginalized community member that doesn't have their citizens' rights or their voting rights, that can actually cast a ballot to decide on ideas that work best for the community that they live in. That's power. And then finally, a predetermined aggregation rule is used to select the winning projects, and the municipal government implements the winning projects. And it's rinse and repeat. And the cycle repeats annually. There's even been examples since 2003 of how this process can be taken completely online and utilized through technological means as well to ensure fair participation across municipalities. The reason I want to bring this to the forefront is Chattanooga is ripe for change. And it's time for the people to lift their heads and to bring their best ideas forward. And I can't speak for my opponent, but this is the process that I want to put in place because I trust you and I trust your ability to be able to bring forth ideas and to learn and to govern and to decide what projects mean the most to your neighborhood. And I want to put money behind those. So how can we change Chattanooga for the better? Well, I tell you, it starts with us choosing a different kind of leader. One who's not posting about NCAA March Madness brackets while the deadline of ARPA funds is coming to a close and money has to be spent with issues we have not closed any gaps on. My name is Mott, and I'm not the people's candidate simply because I say that. I'm here talking about the bold, innovative ideas that puts power back into your hands. This is our city, and it's time for us to act like it. I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. And as always, if no one's taken any time today to let you know you'll love somebody, I love you. Nothing you can do about it. Peace.